In the Netherlands, we have this band, or we used to in the 80s, called Doe Maar. And they have this song. It's called "Is This Everything?" And it's a really great song. It's very catchy. But the lyrics to me have always stuck out because he sings about, is this everything? We have the house, we have the car, we have each other, but is this everything? I don't think so. And that feeling was just buried deep inside of me and made me want to explore.
Okay, welcome everybody by this next episode of the Kundalini Awakening podcast. And today we have as our guest Linda Kouseman from, where are you from?
Netherlands.
From the Netherlands, from?
Actually. And I live in Haarlem.
Yes, you live in Haarlem. And to be honest, and I like to be honest with everybody, all our listeners of this podcast, I know Linda already quite long. Basically already from my study times in the beautiful city of Maastricht, where we were both almost doing the same study, but mainly we were working together in hotel and restaurants and nice catering jobs, exactly. And then we both studied in Maastricht. Then we both moved to Amsterdam. You moved a little bit earlier than me. You moved in.
Oh, I'm horrible with dates.
I think 2006.
I think you moved there, then you came back when I was still in Maastricht. Then I moved there and you moved about a month after me or something. But it was, I think we reconnected in Amsterdam pretty early, as in really quickly after I had moved there.
Yes, exactly. So then we both lived also in Amsterdam, stay connected. And then we both happened to do Kundalini yoga. Was that a coincidence?
I feel that's a trick question. Technically it could have been, but I stumbled sort of onto Kundalini yoga before even having reconnected with you. So in that way, it definitely was a coincidence, because I do remember the first time that we met up in Amsterdam, and it may have been I think you drank a beer, and it may have been the last one you've ever had. But we met, and then you were telling me that you were doing your first 40-day sadhana. And I was already doing Kundalini yoga at another school. So that was like a funny overlap in interests back then.
Exactly. And we're going to talk about how was your Kundalini yoga, Kundalini journey, because you have a kind of a special journey that you made with it. And in our podcast, we like to invite all people who have some experience with the Kundalini awakening process. Some students, some people already 20 years, some yogis, some non-yogis.
How would you qualify me?
Well, I still think you're kind of a yogi, but here's the problem. A yogi is a concept, right? But I think you've gone through the awakening process, understanding that there is a bigger reality, right? Because that has also, and you probably will talk about it later, what you have done in your life. And even right now as a writer, you still have this Kundalini experience somewhere deep down ingrained in your system. So maybe I think it's good for the listeners to get to know you a little bit better, to pick it up. And I always like to talk about, because we call it the Kundalini awakening, what is your story of awakening? How did it start?
It's always tricky, because I'm 44 now and have been on this path for, I don't know, 15 years or so. And within those 15 years, there have been pretty much countless awakenings. But I would say that the first one I was truly conscious of was when I was still back in Maastricht. And I was living together in a house that we bought with a boyfriend, and we had 2 cats, and we were going on holiday the next day. And I distinctly remember lying in bed and thinking, oh, I should be happy, but I'm not. And that sort of set a whole process in motion, including the breakup and the move to Amsterdam. And when I got to Amsterdam, I joined a women-only gym that taught yoga as well. And that was really my first experience with yoga. And just those few classes triggered a lot in me and made me explore Amsterdam. So I went all around town just to figure out, oh, this is a class, that's interesting. Oh, let me try that, let me test that. So I went all around, and until I found a place called Unlimited Health. I'm not sure if they still do yoga, but they're, I think, still a health store, quite a big and famous one, actually. But back then, at least, they had 6 classes of a Kundalini type yoga. So it has to be said that the teacher did all those 6 classes in the day, which is a very intense thing. And he gave them in his own way, but it was still very much connected to Kundalini yoga as Jasper Gurugyan teaches it, and as the listeners will know it. And that really, yeah, I think the word awakening is the one and only word to use there. Because I remember I was living in Amsterdam East, and it was given in the Pijp, and that's about a 30-minute walk. And for some reason, even though everything I did in Amsterdam was by bike, I used to walk back and forth to those classes. And I used to do at least 4, maybe 5, sometimes 6 classes a week, sometimes twice a day. I really got into it. And I used to walk back and forth because it really allowed me to, I don't know, mentally, emotionally, spiritually prepare for the class, but also come down of it. And after first couple classes, I so remember walking back and seeing a blue sky and seeing green leaves on the tree and people biking by and birds. And all of a sudden I felt this joy and this just pure bliss with being alive, and being on this planet and having the privilege to experience all this. And that to me really was the big awakening. And it I knew then, like, oh, this I need to go further with this. And of course, as weeks and months passed, the bliss still was there, but so were all the other emotions that we as humans have. And those were less fun, but nonetheless part of the experience. So that was really the foundation for my journey.
Yeah, so you basically say that your awakening started with a kind of a feeling that, oh, what am I doing here? Or something is not
Yeah.
right? When you were still.
Yeah. In the Netherlands, we have this band, or we used to in the 80s, called Doe Maar. And they have this song. It's called "Is This Everything?" And it's a really great song. It's very catchy. But the lyrics to me have always stuck out because he sings about, is this everything? We have the house, we have the car, we have each other, but is this everything? I don't think so. And that feeling was just buried deep inside of me and made me want to explore.
Yeah, so actually you somewhere intuitively felt that there must be more.
Yeah.
Because that's why you decided, because a lot of people stay then and they're just unhappy. They
Yes.
try to make something out of it, drink a little bit more, or do
Yeah.
whatever it is to numb yourself out of a situation. But you actually allowed yourself to feel the pain. Or
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I've tried numbing. It worked really well for a while until I just realized, like, I'm not feeling anything anymore, and I'm only 28 and I'm stuck in life. That's not okay. So I guess there was, yeah, I could have stayed there. I could have stayed there, and I sort of willed my way through it. I didn't really have the big, running into a brick wall like some people have.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people can relate to that, because you're in your teens, you start to studying, and then you meet, and you start your career, and you have a relationship, you start living together, and then that should be life, right? And then you continue that for 30 or 40 more years, and
Yeah,
then you can enjoy your last 10 years together, right?
exactly.
But that was not what happened in your case.
No, I've always wanted to be normal, and I tried really hard to be that, and I've never really felt like I was succeeding at it. So at that point, I really realized, okay, maybe I should just stop with this normalcy.
Exactly. And then once you started the yoga, and especially when you hit on, I think we can say his name, right? Anil was the name of the teacher, right?
Yeah.
Unlimited Health in Amsterdam, a famous teacher at that days, who was a student of Yogi Bhajan. So he got all the tools, but he didn't. He made his own, or he just shared it in his own way, and he touched a lot of students.
It worked. Yeah.
My God, yeah, it was always. I think I've been there only once or twice, but it was always packed, right? A lot of people there.
Yeah. When I started, it was given in a basement, and it was mat on mat on mat. Like literally mats were overlapping. So many people were there.
Yeah, exactly. And then you really felt something awakening in yourself, a deeper layer of bliss, where you stayed in for quite a while. And then what happened?
Yeah, so the other emotions came up as well. And that made me realize that, oh, yeah, this is part of being human. Maybe I've so far not been a human, and I don't really know how to do it. So it made me look even further. And that's when I came across the Yoga Lifestyle Studio and the teacher training they did there. So the teacher training was really one of the main ways with which I figured, you know what, this could be a very good in for me to learn about being human. And I remember the first teacher training weekend that we had, that Guru Marka, so the main teacher, asked me, like, why are you here? What's your intention? And my intention was, I want to feel everything. And this teacher training lasted 8 months. And coincidentally, of course, not so much, but I had a relationship exactly spanning that period of time that made me feel everything as well. So yeah, there was a lot happening, but an amazing learning curve for me.
So you basically, what you're saying is that through the practice and to the opening up of that, to the awakening, you started to really to feel more. You get more in contact with your feelings and your emotions.
Yes.
And you think this is a common effect that you see in the yoga, or
I'm not sure, to be honest. You do see it. I also have seen that there are people who use yoga as a new type of drug.
Exactly. That's why I was.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Especially Kundalini yoga, because it does keep you in this high and in this blissful state, and you feel lighter, you feel enlightened. But yeah, you're still in this body and on this earth with everything that entails. So I think it was a good thing for me to have both the yoga and then the very earthly relationship next to it, because it really kept me grounded. Like, okay, yeah. So there is that divinity that I feel in myself, and that I feel I'm connected to and part of. There's also the emotional part of me as the human being, but there's also the very, earthy love hormonal elements that I'm part of as well. And that really forced me, that there was just really no way around it. That forced me to feel on a level and to a depth that I just couldn't ignore. And I'm not entirely sure if everybody goes there.
No,
to be honest.
absolutely, yeah, because you can choose for what do you want to open yourself.
Yeah.
But it seems that you really wanted to have the earthly experience, right? I mean, and it's funny thing, because I think Yogi Bhajan tried to said often like, okay, be human first. And because that's more often than not, I think actually the awakening is basically awakening to our humanity, right? Of being human. But then it's interesting to figure out, okay, who were you before your awakening?
Well, yeah, that's a huge question. I feel that this is all, it's a bit tricky because you get into semantics. Like what does it even mean to be human? What is humanity? Like for a lot of people, most people, arguably, the life I had before the awakening. So the university study, the career, the cats, the boyfriend, the house, that's very much human. And I don't feel that there's something wrong with it. And it's not like these people are any less human, they just live a different life. I feel that I would define it more, at least the stage I went through then was me as the human connecting with the soul or my soul. And I don't think at that point in time I realized that this was an infinite, universal, non-dual element of me. But I finally felt myself on a soul level.
Exactly.
And the reconnection with that, now I would define that as my humanity, but that it's a specific definition. I think you can only grasp when you're on this side of that process of awakening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the funny thing is they often say like before the awakening it feels like a certain way. Then in the awakening everything changes, and then afterward it's all the same.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know the exact Zen koan related to that. But in the process of awakening, everything starts to turn around. And then later on, when everything starts to reintegrate again, you start to live your normal life again.
You're back on Earth again.
You're back on Earth again, but now from a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the kind of the universal thing as an awakening process going to, because and it's really funny to figure out that in the end your soul really longs to have a human experience, right?
I think that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm fine either way. Like either the soul is an infinite, timeless, boundless, universal thing, or we're just human beings born out of scientific chaos, basically. And this is a one-time thing. I don't really care about it either way. I feel, I feel the same, tapping into both streams of thought. But to me, it definitely feels as my purpose to have this experience and to the depth that I'm experiencing it right now.
Yeah. And then you also started on a quest on how to be you, right?
Yes.
It,
Yeah. Okay. So that might need some introduction.
yes.
So for me, for most of my life, as said, I tried to be very normal, and I succeeded for a large part. I had a perfectly nice childhood. I had friends in school. I was never bullied. I did fine. So I went to university. I had friends there. I joined a sorority. I quit the sorority because it wasn't for me, but at least, I did the things. I did all the things. But still there was this nagging thing in me. Like I'm still not sure if I'm doing it right. I'm still not sure if I am just pretending to be this normally functioning human being or not. Like I always say that it feels like others have been given the manual to life and humanity, and I was sick the day they handed it out. So like, hey, there's a disconnect, and for some reason nobody I talked to could give me a confirmation that their experience was similar to mine. even in the yoga, even, with the teacher training and the years following that, sort of being part of, the Amsterdam yoga teacher circle or whatever that means, I still felt like, yeah, I don't know. I still feel on my own in all this. And I was on a hiking trip in Normandy, and my boots hurt and everything hurt, and it was beautiful but awful. And while I was going through that, this question hit me like, okay, I know how it is to be me, but I obviously don't get or understand how it is to be someone else. And this is a question that's been bothering me forever. Let me just go out into the world and ask that question to as many people as I can and figure out how their experience is and if it is the same as mine or not. And yeah, that's what I did. I rented out my house and I hopped in my car and then traveled throughout Europe to ask that question for about a year.
And what was your main conclusion? If that's possible.
Well, that I still haven't met anyone
Like
who
you.
experiences me as being me. But that's a conclusion in itself. But at the core, it's what's really cool about this question is how we meet people and they ask you, "Oh, how are you?"
Yeah.
And you say, "Fine," because that's the normal answer. And I always get a little bit icky with it because I'm lying, because how I am is much more complex than that. And also, like, who are you or what do you do? And then people start rattling on about, oh, yeah, I'm a business consultant and I live there and I have kids and I do this. And it doesn't get to the core of the other. And this question does. And it's funny because it just opens up a lot in the other the moment you ask it and you give it the space to be answered. So a lot of the people I met, even if we only had a conversation of about 5 minutes, most of these people I had the most amazing, meaningful conversations with. You really get to, the core of who they are. And sometimes it was great to be them, and other times it was not, but it was always very honest. And it just really went to show me that you can have that meaningful interaction and conversation with almost everyone you meet, no matter where they are in the world or how different their lives are from yours. And of course, that we're all humans, we all want the love and the purpose and the happiness and the health and all those core things that we as humanity want, and we all struggle with similar things as well. So I met a lot of different people and we're all different, but still, yeah, we're very much the same.
Okay, and then this begs me the question: how it is to be Linda? How is it to be Linda? How is it to be you?
Yeah, I hear you. So what's funny, because this question, every time I get asked this, I get nervous. It's funny and like, oh shit, oh, I don't know. It's complicated to be me. It's really good. I can't lie. I'm having a fascinating time here on Earth. I'm really grateful for just the privilege of not just living this life, but also having been born in the Netherlands and having been able to be educated and do all the things, but also just to have the brain I have and have the heart I have and the healthy body that I have. But all those elements, they're very open and very overactive. And I do also feel constantly torn between being this human here on Earth and feeling that my soul or my spirit, or however you want to call it, is way bigger than my body is. So I always feel sort of claustrophobic in my body, and it frustrates me. It's complicated because I also just want to use the knowledge that my soul holds on this earth, and I can't because I'm limited by the body and everything that pertains. so that's a complication. And another one is I feel everything. I'm highly empathic. I can, if I tune into it, I can feel the entirety of humanity just screaming in pain and loneliness and despair. And there's beauty too, but you know, my soul just taps into the pain. Um, and there's only so much that I can do. So I'm also always trying to figure out a way where I can exist and be happy doing so while that pain also exists. So there's a lot of conflict, but I'd say it's good because it also challenges me to grow, and I'm on a constant path of growth. It's almost exponential, and I feel that might just be my core purpose in life.
So, I mean, I think I've told you this before, but in the Kundalini yoga tradition, we work with these 10 bodies. And then we have this 9th body, and you're born on the 18th. So you have the soul link number 9, the subtle.
Dear listener, every time I meet Guillaume, he tells me what a 9 I am.
It's always so nice because now I'm so happy because a lot of my students will listen to this podcast, and I often tell them about the 9 and I tell them about all the bodies. But if they now listen to what you just said, how it is to be you, then they get this story and this experience, how it is to relate from your subtle body, basically, right, where you can feel beyond your own physical boundaries, right? And that's complicated. I mean, because then you are in 2 worlds at the same time.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I could even call it worlds, but yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, or 2 dimensions or whatever.
Yeah.
How would you call it? How would you call it?
Universes,
Yeah,
dimensions.
universes. Okay,
yeah.
Dimensions, exactly. Yeah. So, and then it's a really interesting question. Okay, how is it to live a life from 2 universes at the same time? That must look like a conflict or a contrast. Or, I'm just curious because I think it's interesting, because I think also later on when we talk about, you also have written a book about this, but I think it all comes from really of who you are, right? This is really your experience.
Yeah, it is. It's so hard to explain. I think that's why, no, I know that's why I wrote the novel, because every time I've tried to explain this, people just look at me like either with pity, or they just think I'm weird, or I'm being overly dramatic. And maybe I am all those things, or I'm actually fine with that. But you know, this is just my lived experience, and it's hard to explain in words because this is beyond words. This is, you know, the things we feel, the energy we pick up, but it's not even fluid. Even water is something you can touch. This is like trying to hold on to Wi-Fi or something. So I've used the novel to put it into words, you know, sort of cement it in a story with characters who live it, because that's an easier thing to relate to as someone who is not me. And I'm now trying actually to see if I can get the philosophy in a more practical way into more nonfiction or a course, or things I'm working on. But yeah, it's difficult. It's very difficult because you know, when you feel this way, when you feel everything, when you see the pain in other people, I can see both the potential, which is awful, but I can see the soul in another. I can see that bright light that the sun doesn't even compare to that brightness. But I also see all the layers around it, you know, the ones that we've gotten through just being born and throughout the generations and just having this human body, but also the ones that we build up throughout life. I can see all that, and I can also see when people when okay, so This is so complex. But, you know, when people are working on it or they're okay being them, there's not a problem. But there are a lot of people who pretend to live from their soul, but I still see the barriers and the boundaries. That's where it gets hard, because that's where, to me, friction arises, because someone is not living their truth or speaking their truth. And I tap into that, and that's just a nightmare.
Yeah, I can imagine. But what I wonder is that this capacity to feel beyond, was that always there, or has that increased after the awakening? What is the
Oh,
relation?
right. I think it was always there. But I mean, as you can imagine, it's way too big for anyone to feel, I think. So when you're a kid and you feel that, like, how do you deal? You just don't, right? So you just manage the best way you know how. And I think I came out pretty well, despite. But yeah, I mean, the moment, I think I was mid-30s when I realized, like, just how much I felt. It was after the teacher training and after a couple of years of other things, that I realized, oh shit, I feel everything. Up to the point where I didn't know how to deal with it. Like, I was just one giant open heart, and I couldn't even go to the supermarket without, wanting to, you know, just melt in a little puddle of misery. And I spent, I don't know how many months on my own inside my dark bedroom with no stimulus or whatsoever, apart from maybe Netflix or something, just because I couldn't deal with the world. It's too much. And it's only now that I've found a way to integrate it and live a life that is both in this world and with this world, but still, with healthy boundaries for myself.
Yeah, so that's a kind of a hopeful message, right? Because I think as there is a kind of a more people, as you see how many people are working on their inner being and spiritual development. They say there's the great awakening of the earth. So everybody's opening up more. So there will walk on this earth a lot of people that feel so much and have absolutely no clue how to deal with that. And do you have a formula for that? I don't know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sure. If you do A and then B and
Yeah,
then
well,
and then you'll be happy forever.
that would be great.
For me, it's well, there are so many different aspects to this, of course. Uh, One is intuition. Um, one of the key things that yoga did for me was really get in tune with my body and all the bodies. And it gave me the ability to listen. I didn't always do what it told me in the beginning, but at a certain point you learn that you have to. And that's really at the core. You have to listen to whatever it is one of your bodies is telling you, and you have to do it. If that means that you need to stay inside and just stare at the ceiling and sort of float into the universe for a little bit, then that might just have it. Yeah, that might just be what you have to do. If you feel the urge to create, which is something that I do as well, like I feel like callings to create this or create that and do this, and then I go and do that. So on a practical level, I've been lucky to make sure that I have a career as a business consultant, which I can do freelance. So that helps me to, keep my mortgage paid and allows me to get groceries. But it also gives me that freedom to work in this time that I need to just marinate in things, or just wallow in self-pity, if that's where I am at that point in time. It's listening to yourself and then taking the time to integrate that.
And then in those moments that you're deeply listening to yourself, is that also where you received the calling to write a book about this whole experience that you're having and you're going through? Was it coming out of such a moment, or where did the inspiration for your book
Yeah.
come from?
So for me, it's rarely that I sit down and meditate and beautiful, enlightened things come to me. They just sort of come to me when I know that I'm living my integrated life. So if I feel like I'm doing the right things for me at that point in time, they will come to me. So the book, yeah, that was funny because I was on my trip throughout Europe asking these people the question, how is it to be you? And it was a beautiful trip. I mean, just traveling throughout Europe is incredible and amazing and everything. But it was also a bit weird because life is full of contrasts, and that's something that I'm particularly I pick up on it. And this was also during the time of the Syrian refugee crisis. There were terrorist attacks, so there were like museums and architecture, and then you get into a metro station, and there are people with big guns there because of the terrorist attacks, and it didn't feel right. And I've seen refugees families walking by the side of roads while I was just, frolicking through sunflower fields. It just felt really wrong and weird, and I couldn't make sense of it. But I, yeah, I was just living it, and I was writing, and I was, being there. And that all culminated in a moment where I was living on the island of Lesbos in Greece. And I was lucky, because I am often lucky in these things, that I got to stay in this beautiful little cottage overlooking the sea, overlooking Turkey, actually. Um, and it has a sunset every night, and there were pods of dolphins swimming by constantly. And it was a beautiful infinity pool, and it was quite early in the season, so there weren't that many tourists there. I mean, that was the reason that I was there, because of the refugees on Lesbos. There weren't any tourists coming in, so I was actually helping the island sort of become popular with tourists again. But yeah, I was swimming my laps every night in that scenario, and after having all those experience. And as just swimming can be a meditation, and it's how the moving meditation is my preferred way to do so. And just one of those evenings during a sunset, it just hit me, this idea, like, okay, there's a man, there's a woman, there's a garden. They both live on each end. There's a wall in the middle. From above, it looks like a yin yang sign, and it's a novel. It's a story about the duality of the masculine, feminine, the light and the dark, and all that. And then I immediately got out of the pool. I just I've never written fiction before in my life, so I still don't quite know where that came from, but I knew this is what I needed to do. So I jumped out of the pool and I made all the notes just in case I forgot, and I never forgot, of course, but it's still there. And then the next night I was swimming again, and more ideas popped up, like, oh, maybe there should be a ghost in there. And yeah, like, when I started writing the novel, the ghost actually took over and just wrote his own story through me. So yeah, it was lightning strike or divine intervention, or however you want to call it.
So that was really where these two dimensions or two universes met, right?
Yes.
Where there became a bridge between the one world and the other world.
Yes.
So that must have been a really cool experience, right? Especially because you were not looking for it; it just hit you, right?
Yeah, it hit me. Yeah. No, it was very cool. It was, I mean, terrifying, because I don't know how to write fiction, so it was a whole process to even get there. But I know it was the right one, because, I mean, it took me years to actually get the book written. But when I did, and I hired professional editors, of course, to help me out. So when it was finally there, a couple of years ago, I I felt I could let go of so much of that stress and frustration and friction and all that stuff that I've been carrying inside of me for so many years, just because it was there on paper. And for a couple of years, I was just happy to let it sit on my Google Drive, do nothing, because it already gave me what I needed it to give me. Of course, I'm happy that I actually brought it into the world right now, and go read it, dear listener. But to me, it already just the process of writing it gave me the peace that I needed.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, but of course, I mean, it's important, right? Because you experience something, I think, what other people are also experiencing, and you figured out a way to give words on it and to put it in a story, in a piece of art, right?
Yeah.
Which is really fantastic, amazing, interesting story. Can you maybe give a short sneak preview into the story without, of course, telling the whole plot? Because I think that people really need to read the book themselves for that. And it's called Contrast, right? Maybe you can say something.
Contrast. I've got it right here. It's very
cool.
pretty.
Oh, that's a hardcover one, right?
This is the hardcover. I'm so proud of it. And you're on the back here somewhere with a quote.
Cool.
Yeah, you're here. Yeah.
I'm happy. So.
Yeah. So the book, it starts off with a 68-year-old man who realizes that he's dead. And this is very early on in the book. And he realizes he's dead, but he's still in his own garden. And he just looks around and figures, wait, am I still supposed to be here? This doesn't make sense. There aren't any other dead people around. It's just me and the talking animals in the garden and two neighbors. But yeah, so he felt like I need to be elsewhere, but I don't know where, and I don't know how to get there. And that's, of course, the big thing. One of the main themes is, okay, what are you holding on to in life? What aren't you able to let go or work your way through that is holding you back or weighing you down? And the story is really about him going back through these points in his life that were either very beautiful and finally integrated, or very, very traumatic and had to be worked through and released and processed. And yeah, that all to ensure a sense of enlightening, where I use enlightening as a verb as opposed to.
What really touched me is a kind of a reverse awakening, right? Normally, while you are alive, you awaken to some other dimension.
Yeah.
But how you wrote it, it was really special that that you kind of also can awaken to the fact that you're dead.
Yeah. Yeah. I really wanted to. It's most throughout life, I've always thought it was so, I'm not sure what the word is. It's so impractical to have a body. This human body, it just needs so much maintenance. It's so exhausting.
Yeah.
So it was also just me being able to be that spirit. If you're just spirit, what is left? What happens then? What do you need then? So yeah, that gave me the space to go there beyond, the hormones and the basic daily needs that we all have.
Yeah, because you give a kind of a interesting inside view of how it is to be only spirit.
Yes.
And it's a kind of a process of what happens after death, right?
Potentially, yeah.
Well, but potentially, why
Well, it's still speculation,
Yeah, but for me, that's interesting because we talked about this before.
Uh-huh.
I mean, on the one hand, it's speculation, but the funny thing is that when I was reading it, I felt like, oh yeah, but this is also how it's written in kind of yogically scriptures, how the process goes. So and I asked you this before, it's not that you were researching all about how that goes. It just came how it came. So it's more intuitive, revealed knowledge than just research, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's my truth.
Yeah.
but I do notice in myself that I'm open to being wrong.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should all. I mean, right? I mean, otherwise,
Yeah,
the
if
fun
you're
is
too
over.
attached to one end or another, then that becomes a whole thing weighing you down in itself.
Yeah, but I think it's nice if you, and I think that's how the best books are written or the best things are created, is when you touch on something universal and personal at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Uh, that's also for myself personally as well. If I teach, I can talk about all these difficult spiritual concepts, but I like to talk about my experience,
Yeah.
how these things, how I recognize some universal things in my own life, right? And I think that's what you have done here in this book as well.
I agree. That is very much what I intended with the book. Like the build up of all this within me. I knew it had to find a place in the world. And I'm not one I'm not a teacher like you are in that sense, but this is my way to teach my teachings.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah,
mean, you found your medium or
exactly. Yeah.
to
Yeah,
express what you felt, how it is to be you in a way.
definitely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Although it's not autobiographical, knowing you and knowing the book, there are some similarities.
Oh yeah, there are.
I think that and that makes it also very interesting. And for whom would you think your book contrast would be interesting? What is your audience?
I've actually spent a lot of time these past months thinking about who my audience is.
Yeah.
And I think I can go, I mean, I think it can work for just about everyone. But if I would hone in onto who it would be most beneficial for, there are two audiences. One is the people like the listeners here. I think that the people who are already on their path, they might either find additional insights, or I hate the word trigger, but I don't have a better word at the moment, triggers to further explore things on their own journey. Or they might just get confirmation like, oh wait, phew, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I mean, that in itself, I always love reading books or hearing people speak and think, oh my God, finally, I recognize that it's not just me, so that could be there as well. And then on the other hand, I also see how this can be really interesting to people either just starting out on their path or maybe right before starting out their path. I'm not entirely sure if I'm right, or if I'm allowed to hope this, but it would be great if I can reach people who would read this book and think, oh, wait a second, and then start asking themselves these questions like, oh, wait, what is meaning to me? Am I living a life that is meaningful? And am I maybe allowing things or old emotions or things to hold me back? And what can I do about it? Like, to me, it would be great if I can reach those people and trigger that process within them.
Yeah, so it can start, it can become a medium that can trigger the awakening of somebody, right? And because like you started in your journey when you were not happy, and
Yeah.
triggered you, and that brought you on your journey. I always say there are many gurus. Gurus is just something that touches you, because it comes from another dimension, whether it comes via a book or via a podcast or
Yeah.
it is infinite ways that the universe tries to communicate with us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really all about where are you in your process and are you able to see it? It could be a little bug and you see sort of the rainbow colors and the sun shining off it. And that could be like, oh my God, this is it. And it could trigger you. And I think one of the great things about the path that we're on, and probably all of your audiences as well, like we are doing this for ourselves, but also to ignite or at least give the space to ignite this in other people as well. And we all have our own media in it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I think yeah, it's all about doing the work that we get presented in life, and
Yeah.
transforming ourselves and finding our light, and then
And our darkness.
and our darkness. Absolutely. I mean, 100%.
Yeah.
It's the law of
I mean, there
polarity.
is no light without darkness. I feel that it's a very important thing that we've touched on this already, but it's there is no one without the other. And especially in the spiritual path, on the spiritual path, we need to be aware of that we need to embrace the darkness as much as the light.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and that's also one of the reasons that for me, next to my Kundalini yoga practice, I also do more the tantric work, because you're more allowed to go down and explore that unconscious dark part
Shadow.
of your shadow, and it's actually great, right? Because the moment you can really have both of these polarities, then the energy really starts to flow. There's no judgment, no shame. It's just
it becomes whole.
It becomes whole. Becomes whole, and I think that's what we want, right? But I think so. It's all part of where are you in your journey, and what do you need. So do you have any special wish for your book?
Okay, I have, again, two sides to this because, well, contrast, right? So on the one hand, you know, I'm here just being humble old me who says, if it reaches anyone, that's fine by me. You know, it's fine to just have it out in the world, let it be my legacy, even if it doesn't get read or if it doesn't get read in my generation. That's fine. On the other hand, I'm also thinking, well, you know, it would be nice if this could be a contemporary version of something like The Alchemist. You know, there was a book in the 80s that did a lot of work. You know, if I read it now, I remember the first time I read The Alchemist, I was like, "Ooh, wow, this is very insightful." If I read it now, it's not anymore. But still, it did help me on my journey for a while. And I do wish that, or I do think that this book has the potential to do something similar for a similar type of audience. But I think from a more contemporary, modern perspective.
Okay, I think that's a great thing, because we are really the generation that grew up with The Alchemist.
Yes.
Like, oh wow, the spiritual
world
opening up. But now we have. It's amazing how much has happened in the last 20 years. Also, the amount of yoga studios and the spiritual awareness. Sometimes I'm like unbelievable where we were like 20 years ago, where we started our journey. And unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And then I think it's good that maybe for the new generation or for the old generation who read The Alchemist, and no one has experienced a contemporary story about the same journey, kind of a journey of awakening, can read your novel, right? Would be really cool.
It would be very cool.
And then once it has traveled over the whole world, then we're going to invite you again, because then we have figured out whether your wish came true.
Yeah, though I might be too famous by then.
Podcast. Yeah, then you need to be humble again.
Oh, right. Okay, I forgot.
Is there anything we missed, or you want to share? I mean, people can find the book below the podcast.
Yeah, the book is everywhere where you normally go for books. Online. That needs to be said, online. What we missed, I think one of the things that I do want to share is I think when we started, we slowly touched on it. Like, I started with yoga and it did a lot for me. You know, it's definitely a huge foundation of you know, where I am right now. But my path has included a lot of different things, and even though like my lifestyle right now could be described as yogic almost. I don't necessarily look it, you know, anyone who would look at it from the outside doesn't think, oh, that's a yogi. And I think that's very much okay. And I'm pretty sure that everyone else will think that's okay, but it is a message somehow that I do feel is important to share, because yoga can be part of your path, but it doesn't necessarily have to be your end goal, or it doesn't have to be the main thing that you do. There are many different ways, and they can look very differently. You know, I still love my high heels, and I still love my makeup, and I still love the business consultancy work that I do in corporates. And it doesn't, that all doesn't take away from the values and the truth that you're living. And I think, as a matter of fact, it is more beneficial to the world if everybody finds their own unique paths in life. Because that way you can touch more people in a positive way, and we can make changes from a more integrated part of society than if we were all go, you know, in one spiritual direction, or whatever that might look like. So I'm not sure if I'm making my points really well here, but
so I think so.
okay.
I think, and that's what it is. I mean, yoga should also teach you how to be you.
Yeah.
How to be unique. And of course, there's a time when it's so beneficial to borrow the identity of a yogi so that the process can go on. And then after a while, a lot of people take on a different identity again. It's all identity, different forms.
Yeah.
Some stay in there because they just feel like, oh, this is my home. But it doesn't, it's just the outside, right? Because the inside, it's all about becoming more and more true, more and more you, more and more whole. And it doesn't matter how it looks like. I mean, wholeness on heels is great.
Yeah.
That's not a title for your next
book.
No,
no, the title for my next book, or a next novel, the working title is called "Existing is Exhausting."
That's not so far off of wholeness on heels, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, I think there are nuances there, definitely.
No, it will target a complete different audience. But I like your working title actually a lot. Existence is exhausting.
Existing, yeah.
Existing
as a verb,
Yes, as a verb is exhausting. Well, definitely would like to know more about that book once it is written.
Oh, that's going to take
a little
while.
bit faster than the previous one. But thank you very much for sharing how it is to be you, and how your journey of awakening ended up in you writing this beautiful novel, Contrast, which people are now reading all over the world, because you can find it all over the world, right?
Yes.
Written in English.
It's in English, yeah.
No Dutch translation yet? Not coming?
No. I mean, if there's a lot of demand for it, I'll get right on that. But right now it's just English. Yeah.
But it's a great read. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having invited me.
Bless you.